All right, should we move on to the WA Hellhounds?
Yep, all for it.
Let's do it. All right, so the Hellhounds, sync listed at 11th, finished the week in 14th, and then dropped to 15th after finals. They lost one spot. They had a win and 3/3 on finals days. They didn't have the greatest of finals days. These are a team that you guys probably battled a lot, CV, I'm guessing, in that part of the ladder. How did playing against the Hellhounds go for you guys, and what have you got to say about how they played strategically?
Definitely have a reasonable amount to say about Hellhounds, just in general as far as their strategy and gameplay sort of goes. So with Hellhounds, you've got the lead attack, obviously, Gaza running people through bases. An experienced midfield there in Gooby and Arbel there. New player Comsnake, quite impressive as a new player actually. I hadn't seen them before, and performed well in that team. And then Serenity back for another nationals as well. Quite often what you'd see at the start of the game is Gaza would go out and get a feel for how the game would play out and flow. And if it was going to be a pack game, then he'd play, a heavy defence and go out, pack himself, and then push one or two bases through where he could or whenever he could. But quite often their upper field would be Gaza Gooby down to Arbel as well. Arbel's still got quite a lot of moves, experienced player, reads the play, and if you give him an inch, he'll take a mile. So it depends, but mostly they were sort of as you go down the order there, they get a little bit weaker. So they would try and play a lower base game and rely on a very good defence, good communication to keep players out and to make sure that it stayed a lower base game, that it'd allow Gaza to get through 2 to 3 players through their bases and draw it out for a win that way. So strategically, that was their goal. And as you mentioned before, Bootza, if you expose that lower order there and play the game out to a 6+ base game, often you could run away with it that way. But it's easier said than done. Having a look there, Gaza mainly on attack still managed to pull 120 tag ratio and scored very well. So he performed very well throughout the competition. I saw that he got Crook halfway through it, but didn't slow him down any from what I could see.
It's interesting you mentioned the like that slower style of game and a focus on defense and just trying to get those, the like 2 to 4 base type thing, because they actually had of the teams, they had the 3rd lowest average in round robin, 2nd lowest in Cascade 1, and after Cascade 2 they were like in the middle of the pack. But it's something that's definitely seems to be reflected in their average score as well. And yeah, I think it's definitely the style of play that I prefer as well. But it felt like unless every team was doing that, most games didn't feel like they would stay in that kind of a state for very long. The games always broke out most of the time towards that like 7-8 minute mark, and someone starts getting too many bases and then suddenly everyone's having to play catch up, and now everyone's on like more than 4 bases. So yeah, no, it's interesting you said that.
Well,
Yeah.
it's another thing about the teams they beat. So they beat Catalyst in a game, and that was in the round robin when Spartans were in there. So it was a Spartans, Catalyst, and Hellhounds game, and they got 2nd in that game. And they were also taking points off Sabres, Outlaws, Orcas, who are all, good teams up in that 10th-ish area at various stages of the comp. So they had the strategy to beat the top teams. However, it's not always the best strategy to play around the mid-tier, because the mid-tier games do tend to break open a little bit easier than the higher tier. So it's a case of knowing when to play which kind of strategy. And also Commander Stake is a new player. I got to see him on. He was commentating, I think, one of the nights, yeah. And I actually thought he sounded quite articulate. He clearly thinks about the game. I think he's going to be a great young player for that scene. But he would have been raw, of course, coming off Laser Force and picking up the packs the first time. I think they've got one site down in Rockingham area somewhere where they can go and play on the packs, but it's not the same. So yeah, they would have. That's it takes some adjusting and learning for that. Where did they actually play Commander Snake?
They played Commander Snake in defense with Serenity. That's normally where I'd see them playing. Let me think. I'm just trying to recall here. One thing when you're attacking their defense, they have really good communication. If you look through their statistics, they were trading on pack very well, high tag ratios. Except for the one individual that probably gets stuck in the worst spot in defense. There's always one poor sod that has to take one for the team. Probably Commander Snake. He's got a slightly lower tag ratio, but everyone else is near 1 for 1 on tag ratio. Absolutely phenomenal. So what you tend to see to start with those guys was at least a 3-man D with one Flight and Gaza pushing out for a bit of a sniff, has a look at the situation, then a quick smash with whatever player was on point with Gaza at the time. If you got suckered into a low base game with these guys with their pack on pack, the high tag ratios, it would be very too close for comfort. So the game was basically not to let them play their game. Otherwise, you're basically risking some victory points there, competition points, I should say. So, a thing to note was very good communication and defences. So they always knew where you were at any given stage, who was up next, and make it difficult to go for on cracker base.
Did you get to play them much, Ryan?
Yeah, we actually versed them a few times. They were usually like once in round robin, and then we versed them quite a few times in Cascades as like the lower seed, I guess. We had, they're definitely one of those teams, like you said, Bootza, that they strategically, like Gaz is like a really smart player. He makes a lot of good calls, and then he's got Arbel to bounce off of. Like I remember like from reffing and from playing against them, like Arbel and Gaza kind of like, have a bit of a chat in games and stuff to like bounce off each other and figure out the best thing to do. So yeah, they were definitely a team that if you made mistakes, like they could definitely capitalize on it. You couldn't let your guard down and couldn't be slack. You had to, be playing a good game and, give them the respect that they kind of deserve, I guess, because, otherwise they steal some wins from you, like you were saying. They got some pretty good wins against teams that finished above them. The experience was, like CV said, pretty big focus on their defense. Guys are going around trying to figure stuff out. In our games, we came up against a lot of like a 2-man attack. I have a feeling they were like, because we saw quite a like. I seem to remember I was in defense a lot of the time when they were there, and saw quite like a few different players. So it might have been a stage of the comp where they were like trying to just get some reps of like attacking bases as two together. That was a bit of the impression I got, but just one of those things, like you said, in the mid-tier, games are more likely to break open, and as soon as they broke open, if it didn't break open in a way that was in their favour, they would really struggle to stay on top of it, I guess.
So what do you think, gentlemen, is their next... we don't know if they're staying together, of course, but presuming they do stay together, where would their next evolution be? How would they crack into the top tier?
You go, CV.
CV, you wouldn't.
I reckon experience straight away on Comsnake. So once he develops a little bit more as a player, gets a bit better pack on pack, they're gonna probably progress a little bit more. Probably less reliance on Gaza. They need that secondary attacker to really step up. And basically, once you can't rely on the same player to push people through bases for an entire game. You really need someone else to be able to muscle them through as well, just in case. Otherwise, you're forever going to be playing a defensive style game. I'd like to see them get a 6th player as well, just a bit better on their roster relief. But yeah, developing that new player, getting the 2nd player, and working a little bit on offense in general, I reckon would serve them really well. getting that second key player would be amazing. Gooby's done a great job. Arbel's done a great job. Maybe it could be one of those two.
Yeah, right. When I looked at the list and I wasn't there this year, I thought, they could really do with a second, like another Gazza, and I guess everybody would like two Gazzas, wouldn't they? But yeah, that was the clear sort of improvement from where I was looking from a far distance. That they could, if they had another primary attacker that they could, pop next to Gazza, that would really help a lot. How did you see it, Ryan?
Yeah, it's just one of those things of historically, I think, from my experience in Adelaide, we've had a lot of players and teams that kind of like cubbyhole themselves into like playing a certain way. But as I've played more in the top tier, got a lot more experience, I realized the importance of like the best teams are the ones that can kind of like adapt and do anything. So if your roster is built in a way that you can only play a certain way, that's obviously going to be a really big limitation. So yeah, whether they put an emphasis on training up a second person to really, like that opening batsman to have like a really good start, and that might like benefit their more defensive style as well, right? Like if you can be the team that goes out, gets 2 bases before anyone has a base, like that's a pretty wicked start, right? And then you can kind of slow the game down. You can play that defensive play style if you want. But yeah, I think, I'm just realizing more and more the importance of like having a balanced team in terms of like everyone being able to pull their weight in like whatever position they end up in. So even if they don't pick up another player, putting some time into playing players outside of their comfortable roles. I know that's something that Aftershock put a big focus on for this year, is trying to get everyone, like we obviously had our opening roles that we were like the best in, but getting everyone up to like a high level in all of the roles, because it's all well and good to start off with someone like Gazza getting both bases, but then it's like, well, what next? If he's the one that's like out there all the time running the game. So yeah, just a bit more well-roundedness, I guess, would benefit them really well.
Yeah, I used to always consider Dark Passion as like the ultimate opening batsman. And we used to look at it and go, okay, well, what do you want in an opening batsman? I think one of the main traits in an opening batsman, obviously you need like a high level of technical skill. You need to be able to like crack a door and take out like high level defenders at speed and in whatever way is needed, which Dark Passion had. But he also had this temperament where, when you go out on the initial attack, you're coming up against full reloads, like everybody's got full lives, everybody's structured up at the start of the game, nothing's broken out just yet. Everybody's kind of spends that first minute being cautious, often around the top end of the ladder. And you need to be able to have somebody who can get shot 3, 4, 5 times in a row, but still have the same amount of intensity and intent when they go for a base, and when they communicate and they're not getting down. The whole, I got shot, and you start thinking about why you got shot rather than the fact that you should be calming what's going on. that kind of ability to consistently, beat your head up against a brick wall and just keep going and going and going. And that's what we always felt was a real important part of being a good opening batsman. Anyway, that's just a little bit of a side thing. But yeah, I was really excited when I saw the Hellhounds team. You got to really watch those old school Northbridge players like Arbel. Like they come from a tactical, it was a raw tactical hub back in the late 90s, early 2000s. They all really knew how to play the game. So I've got full respect for what Arbel knows about the game and how to play it. So I'm sure he'd be a great accomplice to Gazza.